been written, then you must write it. So I said, okay, I will write it. So here it is, beautiful little book, and a lady at Punic did my watercolor painting of the faded blue house. I had a friend who said, "Did your family live in the faded blue house?" And I said, "No." But I'll tell you how I got the title. Um, Pete and I were traveling, and we stayed in a brand new um, Holiday Inn that was built obviously on a farm on a very busy road. And so we were in the room, and they always have that bank of windows at the back of the motel. And I was looking across the field, and there was the farmhouse. It was a small, faded blue house. I looked at it and I just studied it, and I thought, that looks like what the Evans family might live in. So that's how I got the title for the book, The Faded Blue House. The Evans family, my family, did not live in a faded blue house. We lived in a gray house. And so, um, I'll see what else I can tell you here. Uh, the Phoebe character is very much based on my mother. There are two protagonists, Phoebe, who is the mother of Joey, Annabelle, and Marie, and her next door neighbor, who is a widow, Faith Ann, are just sweet Christian ladies. And when they see need, they just sort of step in and help out, even though they're very poor themselves. So they are the main characters they carry the whole story. Um, I'm going to read a little bit to you from the book. And this is a true story. The neighborhood iceman, an elderly black gentleman named John Hanley, delivered ice twice a week. His wagon, pulled by Hi-Ho, an underweight, nearly blind old nag of a horse, was a familiar sight, having traveled the same route for a decade. In recent months, Hi-Ho had become gimpy, and Mr. John no longer rode in the wagon, instead walking alongside the horse, leading him slowly, taking into consideration that the horse helped provide his livelihood. He maintained a one-way conversation as they traveled. "We almost finished, old boy. We almost finished for the day. Hang in, old boy. 2 more blocks and we'll be finished." Children faithfully followed the Iceman along the route, socializing as they went. Mr. John's signal to stop at any given house was a yellow and black cardboard sign propped in a front window, indicating the number of pounds desired that day. A heavy tarpaulin protected the ice from the heat, and the children stood close as Mr. John threw it back and used his sturdy ice pick to separate the squares. As the ice chips flew, the children scooped them up, and it wasn't the same as good humor, but it was pleasant, and it was free. The children waited as Mr. John, using tongs, carried the blocks inside, straight to the customer's icebox. And then the group set off for the next delivery. Mr. John was their friend. One day after Phoebe's ice purchase, she remarked, "Your horse seems a bit unsteady today. Is he all right?" "He's all right, ma'am, just old like me." Grasping his bridle, he continued on his route, saying softly, "We almost finished, Hi-Ho. We almost finished." The pair moved slowly into the next block and the next, and the children trailed along, eager to claim stray ice chips. Suddenly, they heard a desperate whinny and Mr. John screaming, "Oh no, oh no." They rushed toward the commotion and were horrified to see Hi-Ho lying against the curb, Mr. John holding his head, weeping. The old horse had collapsed, and a bloody bone protruded from his fractured leg. The wagon, still hitched, was wrenched and twisted. The noise attracted more children, and they gathered, moaning and gasping, "Poor Hi-Ho, poor Mr. John." Within minutes, a policeman arrived and ordered the children to scram. Go home right now. I don't want you to see what's going to happen here." The children started to back away, knowing they should obey the policeman, but they lingered, overcome with curiosity. "I said, go on home. You heard me. Go." Reluctantly, they turned toward home. A short distance from the gruesome scene, they heard a gunshot. They froze in their tracks, horrified. The next week, a new iceman, quite young and driving a Ford pickup, delivered the ice. He was not friendly, nor did he give out ice chips. Something had changed, something the neighborhood children really had not wanted to change. Did any of you have an Iceman? Any of you familiar with that? No. This one is a chivalry, and you'll soon know what a chivalry is if you don't. It was November at the end of a gloriously mild Saturday. Fading sunlight drove Joey, Annabelle, and Marie inside. A spicy aroma greeted them. "What's baking? What's special about today?" Annabelle said. "It's applesauce cake. We're going to a chivalry tonight," Phyllis said. "What's that? Sounds like Halloween." Leela May and Claude got married, and we're going to chivalry them." "Do what?" Joey said. "It's a kind of a celebration where newlyweds get surprised by friends. After dark, when they turn their lights off, we take noisemakers and surround the house, blow horns, ring cowbells, beat pans and such, and call out chivalry. Irving Jones bought a military bugle at the pawn shop. He's preparing to sound the charge. It's just a fun thing. After the noise, there's a housewarming party with cake and cider, and we'll have gifts for the newlyweds." "Well, what are we taking?" Annabelle said. "I'm taking a pretty flower pot with some ivy in it to make it look fancy." "Kids, find yourself noisemakers," Phoebe said. "Like what?" Annabelle said. "Well, just get 2 pot lids or a comb with some wax paper." And straightway the search was on, and Joey practiced his loudest whistle, deciding that he himself was the perfect noisemaker. And if his whistler failed, he could just hoot and holler. Eula and Herschel Jones, having the biggest house in the neighborhood, were hosts for the evening. And when darkness descended, the neighbors took their cakes, their gifts, and noisemakers and quietly gathered. The sweets, along with jugs of apple cider, were lined up on the dining room table, and the gifts were displayed on a side table, properly adorned with an antique tablecloth trimmed in tatting. The children reminded, "Stay quiet. This has to be a surprise, or the fun is all spoiled." Marie whispered to her sister, "Does this seem odd to you?" "For sure," Annabelle said, shrugging her shoulders. The group walked silently to the house of the newlyweds, circled the house, remained hushed until the lights went out. On cue, Irvin, the bugler, let loose a powerful sound, whereupon the racket commenced. There was hooting and howling and calling and shouting and beating and banging on pans and scrub boards, and someone had brought a cowbell, but the chief noisemaker was the raucous bugle that created a general feeling of merriment. The children didn't understand the timing or the purpose of the noisemaker, but the adults did. It took several minutes for the couple to appear at the door, the new bride's face in a noticeable flush. "Chivalry, chivalry," the neighbors shouted. "Get dressed, we're having a party." And Claude was swept away by the strong men and placed astraddle a rail and carried off down the street. And Leela May got dressed and was escorted by the ladies. Before the cake was served, the host said quietly, "Let us pray." Heads bowed and prayers began. "Dear God, we ask you to look down with favor on Leela May and Claude as they begin their life together. Give them enough prosperity to make them comfortable and enough humility to always look to you for guidance. And now bless this gathering and bless this food we're about to receive. Amen." The party continued until everyone knew it was bedtime for the children. The group made its way home by moonlight, newsmakers quiet, families dropping off as they reached their own homes, neighbors calling out cheerful good nights, awash with the feeling of contentment, though in the morning, mothers would once again take up their worries about how to get the things they needed for their children. Claude and Leela May, back home, discovered that during the party, pranksters had entered their house, dismantled the bed, and the mattress was nowhere in sight. The next day, Marie asked, "Why did we wait until after dark to make all that noise last night?" "Well, sweetie, that's just the way the party is planned. That's what a chivalry is all about." Annabelle said, "I think it's about sex." "What's sex?" Marie asked. "I know, but I'm not going to explain it to you. You're not old enough to understand." "I am too. I'm almost 8. But you're not 8. You're 7. And you wouldn't believe it anyway. It's really weird." And I have one more little thing to read you. Now, I mentioned that Phoebe and Faith Ann were these wonderful ladies who just tried to help everybody who was in need. And there was, early in the story, there was a teenage girl who was pregnant, and her family had disowned her because they said they did not want a bastard grandbaby. So she was homeless, and Faith Ann took her in and took care of her. And at this point in the story, the baby has been born, and Loretta is still with Faith Ann, feeling very protected. One morning, in desperation, Loretta said, "Faith Ann, I think my heart is going to bust wide open if I don't get to tell my mama about little Walter. I want her to see how beautiful he is, and I want her to know that I got married and I have a wonderful husband, and she needs to know that I have forgiven her for throwing me out." Faith Ann was not surprised. On several occasions, Loretta had expressed heartbreaking longing for her family. She hesitated and then said, "Let me give that some thought." And a few hours later, she said, "We'll ride the street bus to your mother's house. We can afford 20 cents for a round trip, bus trip. Would you like that?" "I really would. I really would like to see my mama." The next morning, Loretta gave Walter a bath and dressed him in his new blue cotton suit sewn by Phoebe. "Mama won't be able to resist this precious baby boy, I'm thinking. After all, it's her grandchild, her own flesh and blood." When told of the plan, Phoebe grimaced. "I hope it goes well for Loretta. She's risking a broken heart, and that makes me sad." "Well, let's just hope and pray for the best," Faith Ann said. A short time later, Phoebe watched from the front window as her neighbors struck out for the bus stop, Loretta carrying Walter, and Faith Ann carrying a bag containing an extra bottle and some diapers. They climbed on the bus, heading toward the outskirts of town where Loretta grew up. Soothed by the ride, baby Walter quickly fell asleep. Arriving at the bus stop near her home place, Loretta said, "Here we go, Miss Faith Ann. Wish me luck." "I'll do better than that. I'll ask God to be with us." "That's our house right there," Loretta said, pointing. As they went up the steps of the tired old house, Loretta took a deep breath, paused, and knocked on the door. She looked at Walter, straightened his straps, and smiled. No one came to the door right away. She knocked again. The door opened, but it was not her mother. It was no one she had ever seen before. "I'm looking for Mrs. Green." "Oh, honey, the Greens don't live here anymore. They moved away months ago," the stranger said. She looked at Walter and smiled. "That's a beautiful baby you have there. How old is he?" "Thank you. He's 4 months old. Could you possibly tell me where the Greens have gone?" "Well, hon, I couldn't tell you that. I don't know. They left in a rush, and they didn't take much with them. I have most of the furniture. I think maybe they've left the area." Stunned, Loretta said, "Thank you. I'm their daughter, and I was hoping to show them their grandson." "I understand. He's precious." Faith Ann got bold and said, "Could we possibly come in to change the baby's diaper and maybe have a drink of water? It will be a while before we get back home." "Of course, hon. Come on in." Inside, Loretta glanced around. There was the familiar faded mohair couch, a beat-up desk in the living room, and through the doorway into the kitchen, she could see her family's old dinette set. The house looked pretty much the same, but things were not the same at all. Loretta was speechless and trembling. Faith Ann wanted to hug her, but decided not to. After the diaper change and a drink of water, Loretta said softly, We're much obliged for your kindness. We'll be on our way." A cold wave of sadness swept through her. Her chest ached, and she winced as she took her short, shallow breaths. What Faith Ann had warned her about months ago had now happened. On the bus trip home, Faith Ann waited for Loretta to begin a conversation. She didn't, and they rode home in silence. After taking the spare bottle, Walter fell asleep. Loretta resolved to never mention the shattering incident again, choosing to make it her own private heartache. That's it. Thank you. I don't know how the time is going here. I think I have 5 minutes. If you have a...
Tell everybody about why, what made you, out of 86 years, what made you actually then write this book?
Well, I guess I've always been interested in history, and I guess even early on I knew that was a special time period. One reason is because we had a Civil Conservation Corps camp in our town, at the edge of our town. So I was aware of the CCC camp, and the expression was, I would rather dig ditches for $1 a day than do $1 or whatever it was. And that didn't make any sense to me, but later on I understood they were talking about the CCC recruits. And then later, when at the outbreak of World War II, of course, the New Deal was ended and the CC camp was closed, but they then used that CCC camp as a prisoner of war camp. We had German prisoners right in our town, and we lived nearby, and they were made to do field work. The prisoners, they didn't loll around. They were sent out to do work, and they would come by our road, and they would wave at us, and we would wave back. We didn't feel that we were in any danger, but we were quite young. But we were not taught to fear that. We had a lot of beans and potatoes because my father was a truck driver and didn't make a lot of money, and money was needed, and so we had very inexpensive food. And people used to say, "Oh, they just eat beans and potatoes," and I used to think, "What's wrong with beans and potatoes?" But I thought they were good, and I still do. And so it was just different things that stuck in my memory. And as I mentioned earlier, I think this time period needs to be noticed and recorded before all of us who experienced it disappear. And if you have stories and you're from that age group, I encourage you to recall some things that are worth mentioning, even if you just do it for your own children or grandchildren. Yes, ma'am.
Could you ask that question again, or could you answer that question again? Just
Okay. I'm going to read this from the back. Phyllis B. Olson, that's me, is an Arkansas native, child of the Great Depression. The Faded Blue House is based on childhood memories, family lore, plus stories gathered from contemporaries. She is a retired special education teacher, now residing in North Carolina. So, did that? Oh, as a matter of fact, I have. I have had friends say, well, you haven't read the book yet. There is the little boy that I mentioned that was given away by a family that couldn't feed him doesn't make it back to Maxwell, the little town. And I had several people say, you have to write some more. We have to know what happened to Nicky. Did he ever make it back to Maxwell? So if I live long enough to finish this book, and you decide to read it, you'll find out what happens to Nicky. All will be well. All will be well. Okay.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. Okay, now so Richard is gonna.
Thank you.
So Richard is going to come up now, but while he comes up and tells you a little bit about himself, I'm going to get the projector going because he's got some pictures that he wants to share. And would you like this in here, or do you want to hold it?
I guess if it's
Podium. And,
Thank you.
oh no, right there. Well, as Phyllis, I can help everybody realize that you don't have to be in your 80s to write a book. Now, I'm 82, so I'm right behind you, Phyllis. But why did I write this book? The book of tales, travels, and topics. Well, I have been blessed to have had many experiences in my life, and I started off as a farm boy on a dairy farm. And if any of you know anything about a dairy farm, you know a child starts working when they're about 12 years old or younger. So I learned all about what work was all about as well, and consequently, I never dreamed that I would have traveled over 12 different countries, both in Europe and Asia. I never dreamed that I would have retired from the medical field and retired from GlaxoSmithKline Beecham company, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, which I enjoyed very much over the years of about 30 years in the medical field. But I've had friends for many years say, Richard, you have had such a varied life, you need to write a book. And how do you go about writing a book? Well, first of all, you know, people think about books, they think about, you know, history, facts, fiction, or nonfiction. Well, this book is really nonfiction because I'm telling about true stories and history and the reality of what I've discovered about the joys and pleasures and honors that I have had in living this long life. So, I guess the best thing would be for me to read, I would like to read Pleasant Memories. I would like to read from H. Jackson Jr., who is an author on trying to express various strategies that people should think about in living a wonderful life. And it goes like this. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. That is the essence of my life. And that, as Robert Frost would say in Taking the Road Less Traveled By, has made all the difference. Now, when you are writing a book, and I think Phyllis has discovered the same, that you have to have somebody keep a close eye on your writing or putting the book together or giving you ideas. Well, I was very fortunate to have a gentleman by the name of Bill Etzel, who is sitting right over here. He didn't know I was going to bring his name up. But Bill is an excellent organizer. Oh boy, can he organize. But more than organizing, he loves to take pictures. And he has traveled around the world and visited all of the continents throughout the world. So he's had a lot of experience. And while I was working on my book, I asked Bill to give me some of his ideas and opinions. Well, he said, Richard, you're going to have to make the pictures more sharp, more clear. So he went forth hour after hour and helped clarify my beautiful pictures that I have taken and have been able to share throughout my life. So I give kudos to Bill for his hard work and effort in helping me put a book together that when you look at a picture, you don't have to try to guess what's in it. You can figure it out. But I want to give honor, and I got to watch. I'm an emotional type fellow, so be careful here. I want to give honor to my oldest brother who fought during World War II. And he had the responsibility of flying the hump. The hump was identified by the China, Burma, India route. And it was considered, as we were supporting China, it was considered one of the roughest routes to fly, even worse than flying into Berlin. And my brother said that approximately 20% of the flights didn't return. Why? Well, some of them were shot down by the Japanese, but the majority slammed right into the mountains. They couldn't fly high enough, or the cloud cover, the instruments in the plane, didn't have the modern instruments that we have today. So a lot of times they were flying what they said by the seat of their pants. And sometimes that just didn't work. Or after they made their bombing runs going through Burma and into China, when they would return, there would be a storm that would come in over the airfield, and they ran out of gas before they can find a place to land. So it was a very treacherous. And my brother was part of that. I'm very proud of my brother. And when he died of lung cancer, I'll never forget this. I'm not aware that I would be talking on some of these points, but while my brother was sitting in the office and I was holding my sister-in-law's hand, she asked me to be with her. His doctor informed him there was no hope and that his cancer was going to win and he had only a few months to live. And he said, Doctor, he said, I would like to try to go to Houston or Mayo. The doctor said, it won't do any good. And this was a very touching moment. He said, Tony, what did you have to do each time you took flight? And he said, I had to fill out the paperwork and to make sure all the paperwork was in order. So if I didn't return, the doctor said, Tony, you must fill out the paperwork. You will not return on this flight. And so when we walked out to the car, I thought, we're not going to go home and feel sorry for ourselves. So I said, Tony, Bill, there's an Italian restaurant down the road. We're going to have one heck of a party. I used a different word. And we bought a bottle of wine, went through that, and then he looked at Phil and he said, I think we're going to have to buy another bottle of wine. And Phil says, you guys are going to get drunk. And Tony said, who gives a damn? And that was the best thing we could have done. But let's go back to the book and the sections that I have in the book and helping to explain, which is really a portrait of my life. The tales were from the farm, and some of the problems and challenges that we boys would get into. Some were comical and some were tragic. And that's how most things in life go. And then I decided to travel. And as you can see, adventures in Italy. We'll go through that shortly. And I felt like it was important to share some of the key countries that I've had the honor of visiting. And then when we get into topics, well, one of the interesting areas of the topic is related to the years I spent in the medical field and what I learned about medicine, about food, about health. Well, what did I learn? I learned that food and medicine are the same. They're chemicals. Our body is made up of chemical elements, which isn't much more than 6 or 7. Let's take hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. We can throw in carbon, calcium, phosphorus, and throw in a little sulfur, and we have 99.9% of the makeup of our body. And some of those elements are heavy elements. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We are from the stars. If it wasn't for the death of a star, the supernova, the remnants left over from the star dying, we wouldn't have birth. So we have life due to the death of stars. We are of the stars. That's the way I looked at it, and that's the way I've learned as I've worked in the field of the medical field of chemistry. And it is important. For example, I have a booklet here, The Secrets to Living a Healthy Life. Now, that's not the book I'm talking about today, but it does happen to be one of the topics in the book. Well, why did I want to put that in the book? So many individuals do not realize that what you eat is so critical to your health. Or if you're on medicine, I happen to be today on 2 different types of medicine trying to correct diverticulitis, which can be a very serious illness. Okay, I did some research. The medicine I'm on, I shouldn't have any milk products. I shouldn't have any cheese. I shouldn't drink coffee. Now, did my doctor tell me that? I have a wonderful doctor, but regretfully, a lot of physicians don't take time to help an individual to understand with your illness, with my medicine, this is what you should or should not be consuming. And so I thought it was important to put another little booklet together. And it, again, is in the book itself. But I've learned a lot from Neil Barnard, MD, Your Body in Balance. And that's what life's all about, is balance. Balance. You know, I was in my 40s before I realized that it was wonderful to have a bad day. It was wonderful to be sad and unhappy. Why? If I didn't have a bad day, how would I identify a good day? Think about it. Balance. And outlive. Peter Attia is an excellent writer and doctor who has taken the basics of life and helped people to understand what we need to be thinking about as we go forward and have a few more birthdays. Well, I talked about travels. Let's see if I can get this to work just fine here. Me and electronics, sometimes a challenge. But before I forget, I also would like to emphasize in the back of the room here and close to the wall is Veronica Sanchez and Mike Iancelli. And they are of the Home Choice Network. And I happen to do public relations with them, and they're great folks and a great company to work with. But with further ado, let's see what we can do here. I'm going to bounce around in talking, so there we go. And I guess you can hear me okay. Here we are in the travels of Italy. And by the way, if you've never been to Italy, you will be amazed of the history and the architecture. Oh my goodness. So let's take a look and see what we have. Now, I'm pushing the arrow. Maybe you need to turn it on. There's a green light. Oop.
It was a green light, but.
Okay. Okay, well, we will go forward. One of the, there we are. One of the things that I've done in the book, very good, thank you. One of the things I've done when I have talked about the travels in different countries, so many times folks feel like they understand what a country's all about by just learning that it's called, hey, Australia, Italy, China. Well, you know what, folks? I thought it was important to try to have an outline of, if you're talking about Italy, let's compare Italy to the United States. My goodness, it's not very big, is it? So, and then here we have, I believe we jumped, well, we're in United States of America, I'm not sure. Well, there we have Italy down at the foot there, and you can see the foot of Italy. And I did a tour of Italy. It happened to be with my brother, Tom. My brother and I have wives who will not fly over the pond. Well, you can't drive. So we tell our wives to have a nice time at home because we're going to go see what's on the other side of the world, so to say. So here's Florence. And the Medici family is a very well-known family and rich family in the history of Italy. And the cathedral, a lot of this is self-explanatory. You know, he still doesn't wear any clothes, but let's just don't worry about that. It is a beautiful statue, and it's a large statue, about 7 feet or so tall. And it's Michelangelo said, all you have to do is just bring the beauty of the statue that you're working on from the stone. It's already in the stone, just bring it out. And the Vecchio Bridge, very well known. And then in Murano, glass clear back in the 1500s was very famous glassware. And yes, it was on a gondola. And my brother and I stepped on a gondola, and who stepped on with us? Well, a fella playing the accordion and singing. Well, we were a little bit embarrassed because we thought people might thought we were gay or something, and he was singing a song to us. But we had a good time. And that's correct. Everywhere you go in Venice, they don't have roads, you have canals. And then San Marco Plaza, water still backs and flows in the plaza itself. St. Mark's Basilica, you can see the beauty. And yes, I was surprised when I spent time in Italy. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is not the only leaning tower. It seems like a lot of times you go into this city or that city and there's a leaning tower someplace. And Umbria is one of the more beautiful spots in traveling in Italy. And now, of course, you have to talk about Rome when you're in Rome itself in Italy. And then the Vatican, which is very beautiful. The Sistine Chapel is breathtaking, breathtaking. In the upper corner at the opposite end, they left about a 1 square foot area. that they did not restore. So the visitors will have an opportunity to see how much restoration was at hand to come back to the beauty of the chapel. And the reason it was covered in the ceiling with a lot of I'm not saying it correctly. Soot is the burning of the candles that they would have in the chapel. And of course, this is an outstanding painting of Michelangelo, and the basilica itself, and Pieta. And here we have St. Petersburg Square. And I'm just going to jump right on through here. There's a lot we can talk about. To visit the Mount Vesuvius area and Pompeii is just marvelous to walk around the ruins and to see how people lived so many years ago. And to still see the painting on the walls is marvelous. And here we are, Capri, near the inn, and overlooking beautiful area. And then let's see here. Okay, we've covered Italy, and I'm ready to go to China. If I can we jump on to China here? All right. Yes, there we go. One of the reasons I brought in China is we of the Western world really do not fully understand a lot about the life of the Eastern world. And there's a big contrast, a big difference. I had one of my friends make a comment one time that, oh, you travel in Asia. Well, Japan, Korea, China, they're all the same. Well, no, they're not. And all of this information, of course, is in the book. And here we all know about Confucius. Now, this surprised me. There's not that much difference in size between China and the United States. And a lot of people are always thinking China is so much larger. But see how quickly you can get educated with the picture. And yes, I was on the Chinese wall. And while I was on the wall, I also was on a camel. And I had extra, my friends, when I went on a tour in China, I was with the Chamber of Commerce in Syracuse. And they decided to take a trip to China. We had special arrangements with the Chinese government, with our Chamber of Commerce, and I jumped at the chance because it was a fantastic opportunity. And so they put a book together for me. And
It's
whoops,
noon
so there we
Wednesday
are.
in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the
There we go. Tiananmen Square. It's amazing to stand there. And Mao Zedong's mausoleum. And we're all aware that for many centuries, China has been excellent in producing various Chinaware. And here we have modern day Beijing and the Forbidden City. To walk around the Forbidden City is, man, you're walking back into history. It's amazing. And then we have the different halls. Here's Harmony, and then the last dowager was the Empress Z. And lions are very well thought about in China regarding the power. And whoops, I hit me going backwards here. Whoops. There we go. I have to tell you a story about the Heavenly Temple. While we were visiting the Heavenly Temple, the next thing I realized my bus was, I didn't know it, but everybody was loaded on the bus and getting ready to leave. And this elderly lady was making all kinds of commotions, and she spoke as much English as I do Chinese. So all I can go by was her frustration, and she kept pointing towards the bus. Well, I immediately took out about 300 yuan, which was a lot of money to her, and quickly gave it to her and hopped on the bus. And I said, "You all folks, you're leaving me behind." They said, "Well, we thought you were in the back of the bus. Now, how would you like to be stranded, not speaking a language with 29 million people?" So that 300 yuan was well spent. And I'll go back here again. The Market Street, it's very, very crowded in China about wherever you go. There's a festival going on at the Great Wall of China, so few folks showed up that day. And here we have the Ming Tombs, and then Shanghai. And again, like in Venice, this is known as the Venice of China in Suzhou. I was in Beijing, Shanghai, Hangzhou, and Suzhou, and some beautiful areas. And we'll move right along. I think this will pretty well. Now, a lot of folks probably don't realize that bonsai trees really didn't start from China, started from Japan. But this is one of the wonderful things that you can learn about when you're traveling throughout the world in different countries. Well, you've got an idea from my book. I jumped around a little bit, but Secrets of Living a Healthy Life is in the topic area. More about my brother and the flight that he had to take at different times over the hump is in here. Little philosophy. But at this time, I'll stop and see if anybody has any questions that you would like to throw out. You know, I've been asked that many times. One of my favorite countries, I would have to say, is Ireland. Oh my goodness, the people there just can't do enough for you. But I've loved Japan. One of the things I've learned is ambition. There's Korean, there's German. If you learn some basic aspects about languages, the people will readily receive you, particularly if they realize you're from America. You're showing respect to them, their culture, and their country. And often they can't do enough for you. Any other questions? Well, all I can do is say it's been a pleasure to chat with you today and help you understand about my book. I kept putting it off, and finally I thought, well, it's like climbing a mountain. What do? You take the step, and after a while you can get to the top. And I'm working on another book now. It's going to be more for my family, and we have authenticity of our genealogical line going back to the 1400s. And I plan to write a book that will bring each generation forward to the present. And I'll find that very interesting, since I like to read a lot of history. So if there's nothing else, yes, ma'am? Yes, very good. I was a technologist and ran and did tests in clinical laboratories, in pathology labs and hospital labs, and then later worked on up the ladder and set up state operations for GlaxoSmithKline. Well, I started off in Florida, ended up in Tennessee, and before it was all over, I was in New York. So I've lived in 11 different states. A lot of times with a large corporation, you have to follow along what they suggest. So, any other questions? Okay. Yes, well, my family, youngest brother was a retired dentist. My oldest brother was in medical research. And I've got 3 veterinarians in the family. So we were raised on the farm, but we decided the medical field was a good place to go. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, so our next speaker, we have, oh, I'm sorry. You got it? Why is this turning off? All of a sudden, I'm having a Jessica from the Givens Tufts Library. And what's that? Bookshop, sorry. It's a little bit of everything, yes, because it's a bookshop that helps the library. So it's a combination, and it's like the circle of life in the book world. So, yeah, exactly. So I'm very glad to have you here today and talk about that, because I thought with book lovers, maybe we could all help out whatever it is that you might need. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everybody. How you doing? All right. So, see if I can do this. There we go. Yeah. Hi. It's been a little while since I've done a speaking, so bear with me. After myself, I will be introducing two of my volunteers who I thought would be great to represent the bookshop, so you guys get the volunteer perspective. You guys hear? There we go. Better? Okay. So just a little bit about, I'm the manager of the bookshop. I've been there for a little over 2 years. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the bookshop, which I see a few familiar faces in here, it's located in the heart of the village of Pinehurst. We're a volunteer nonprofit organization where our proceeds, as Lynn was talking about, go to the library and archives in Pinehurst. And it helps in a multitude of ways. There's the reading programs. We've gotten them new tables and chairs in the archives and all sorts of other items as well. The current location has a rich history at the old outpost building dating back to 1934. It was built originally as the village post office. Most of you may already know that. As there was no home mail delivery until the 70s, villagers had to get their mail from the post office. So it was a place where you'd see your friends and your neighbors, and everyone would gather. But in 2011, the post office moved. And so in 2014, the Given Memorial Library actually leased the space for the nonprofit bookshop, which was originally located in Olmsted. And then in 2015, after renovations, and they partnered with Elliott, who subleases the roast office there, the doors were open to the public. And it's become another place for the neighbors and friends and visitors to come and gather once again. For those of you who don't know, the bookshop is directed by the Given Tufts Foundation. They originally gathered as an advisory library board before the transition in 2022, when the library and archives got taken over by the village of Pinehurst. However, the bookshop is still overseen by the foundation. Obviously, I'm the manager, but we have about 62 volunteers. We have volunteers who do all sorts of other aspects besides the usual greet customers and be on the register. We have some people who come and just shelve, some people who come and help pick up excess books, and they bring them to the free little libraries. So even if we get over inundated, there's still books going somewhere else. And we really uphold our recycled reading kind of phrase that we use. How do we get all that inventory? Well, we rely on our public to donate all of this. Everything in that bookshop outside of our merchandise is 100% donated. So puzzles, movies, CDs as well. And we also, the merchandise, I brought some of those totes today, so if anyone's interested, you can come see us afterwards. And we also have some like cards and note cards, and we try to bring in only local, artists or, people, artisans and stuff in order to sell their stuff. Obviously, you'll find a great selection of books in our bookshop. For those of you who've been there, we also still have the original vault of the post office, which is a really fun little tiny space, but it's a favorite among our customers. And so, combined with the roast office, because obviously as soon as you walk in, the roast office is right there to your right. You smell the coffee, it's great. We've just become an amazing community, the two businesses together, offering that space, creating that community hub for the heart of the village. And since I've been there, because I'm not originally from here, I came from Rhode Island, it's just been great working with so many amazing volunteers who come from all over the world. I have a couple people from England. I have someone from Denmark, so it's a lot of fun. It's really fun. We all like to have fun. We all have our things too that we like to do. Like some people love to do the merchandising and put all the tables together. But with that, I brought two of these wonderful volunteers with me today because I believe that they are one of the biggest representations and faces of the bookshop because they're there more than I am. They help run the show, and without them, we wouldn't be there. So with that, I have David Letizia and Linda Canon, if they'd like to come up, and I will step away, and they will give you a little bit of their experience as volunteers, maybe why they volunteered, and whatever else you want to say. If you have any questions, feel free to come to the table and ask me later. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I've been a volunteer at the Bookshop for 3 years now. Before I moved here, I would come visit Pinehurst, and one of the destinations was the Bookshop. You walk in, and people are friendly. There's always interesting things to see. And I thought, if I move here one day, I really want to volunteer there. And the people at the desk always were so welcoming, and they encouraged it. Before I even moved here, they gave me a volunteer slip. It was one of the reasons actually it made me want to pick Pinehurst to retire in. Like I said, I've worked there for 3 years, and the type of volunteers that we have high school students, we have middle-aged people, and then we have retirees. And everybody works together, and everybody, when they come, is excited. It's not just like going to job or going to work or a drudgery to volunteer. The people who come in are, when you're a reader and you like books, everybody here, we're here for a common reason. And it draws you in, you have a connection. And you just meet with people that come in all the time. We have people that stop by, even people who, at the car show, I just happen to work the car show every year. And people come once a year and they always want to come into the bookshop. And they talk about it when they come in. It's really fun to meet the different people. Some of our duties when we're there, we have different shifts, and the different shifts you do different things. There's a cash register involved, which I didn't do that. I was in the medical profession, so I didn't use a cash register. I love it. It's almost like a toy. It's fun using a cash register, and it's not complicated. Jessica brought in a new system that is easy to use. And it's really fun to do. And people bring up their books, and you do have to know the different prices. And we shelve. I didn't even know the word shelving. I thought it was filing. I didn't even know that you call it shelving, like at a library. And so after people bring in the books that they've donated, they're sorted, and then you put them on the shelves. And different people have different skills. We have a lot of retired teachers, and there's one girl that's just wonderful. She's a real historian, so she knows where in the vault, as Jessica's talked about, she knows exactly what war, what part of the world, different things. So she's really good at organizing that area, the bookshop. Let me see. Even if you've never volunteered before and you just want to do something different, it's an easy job to come to learn. Everybody's very helpful in getting you situated. And then there's one girl who's a volunteer who's actually she schedules everybody. It's a big job to schedule 60-some people to fill all these shifts, but she does it and makes you feel very appreciated. And people travel, and she works around your traveling. And you can either work regular shifts like that, like every other Tuesday, or do that, or you could be a substitute. All the volunteers are welcome. They're all valued, and we all really love our job there. And I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
seems like everyone came prepared with some written words. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the Academy for this award. Oh, sorry, wrong speech. This is for next year's Oscars. Okay. My name is David Letitia. I moved here in 2018, but my sister, who's actually a local doctor, she moved with her family in 1999, and then my mom moved down here in 2006. So I've been visiting roughly once a year, and then when I moved to Northern Virginia, I was coming down several times a year, and then finally I took early retirement in 2018, moved down here. I worked at the bookshop for 1 year before the pandemic, and when that occurred, and you all remember that, and the bookshop was first closed and then open only with one person, and slowly volunteers came in, but I couldn't go back to the bookshop because my mom was living with me at the time, and I kind of became her caregiver. And also, one thing, the Senior Enrichment Center here has a really good caregiving support program. So if you are in that position, I recommend checking them out. So she passed away in 2022, and then I said, you know, for the first few months, like, you know, I didn't really feel like doing anything, but actually going back to the bookshop and volunteering again, I basically came back kind of like when Jessica started as the manager and the village took over the running of the library. I found that it actually helped with the mourning process, getting through that, just interacting with people. So, and I really made some good friends through the bookshop. So, I mean, you've heard about, you know, a lot of things that we do, but I mean, the two things I highly recommend, like if you haven't been to that bookshop yet, to go, because it's really, it's really a wonderful place. I mean, there's no other bookshop, definitely in Moore County, like it. And because, you know, I like to tell people that when it comes to my book reading hours and my book buying dollars, I'm very promiscuous. So I read everything and I go buy books everywhere, but there really is nothing like the Given Tufts Bookshop, because it's a lot of used bookstores. They're like very crowded and musty. I mean, some people like that, but this is like more open. I mean, it's more like a retail bookshop, but it's got the independent bookshop flavor too. I actually think that if you just like browsing for books, it's like a wonderful place to do that. So one story about that. So about 6 months ago, so it was either Thanksgiving time, Christmas time, I noticed this one young woman browsing in the bookstore, and I remember that she had been there like a half hour earlier with, I guess, her boyfriend or husband, because they're a young couple in their 20s. And I said, weren't you just here like half an hour ago? He says, well, you know, we're in town for like a family thing, so it was been the holidays, and you know, we just stopped in here. They both weren't familiar with the town, so they were just like walking around. And I said, we stopped here, but you know, he's not really a book person, so he's now, you know, having something like lunch at Dugan's with a couple of his friends or family members, and I decided to come back because I need to take my time. So she was there for about 45 minutes, and like she probably got about like 10 books. So like, you know, she was a book person. So browsing is really a wonderful experience there. And then another story is, you know, we depend on what the community donates, and I mean, you're surprised what people donate. So one day I came in, and there were like about 100 new Civil War books that come in. So Jessica told me, you know, we have for those that have been there, you know, we have the vault, which was the actual vault when that building was the post office. And that's where we keep like the history books, biographies, religion, social sciences, those kind of things. So first of all, we had to like shipped, I had, what she asked me, to ship all these books around to fit these 100 books. So I know I did that. And then I go in there to shelve the books, and we do it alphabetically by author. But as I'm shelving them, this gentleman comes by and he starts looking at it, and he goes, he seems really interested. I said, well, sir, because, he's kind of like preventing me from doing my job. Right? So I said, okay, so what happens at the bookshop is people donate, they go to a donation table, but the public can't buy the books from that point. They have to be essentially sorted and evaluated by Jessica or volunteers that have been trained by Jessica to be able to say, we don't sell this book, it's too bad condition, or this book, we should see if this is a really a vintage book, because many of our books are priced higher than the standard book of that type, because someone's gone through the work and see on eBay this or Amazon this goes for $10 used, so we can maybe sell it for $8 instead of $5 something like that. Because our goal is to raise money for the Given Tufts Memorial Library. So I told him, well, so after the books are sorted, they go to a set of bookcases that they are then to be shelved by topic, and the patrons can actually go to those shelves and take books for purchase from there before they actually get onto the shelves, because they've been properly evaluated. So I told this gentleman, why don't you look at the books that have yet to shelve, and then you go through and see the ones you like, because that way he'll just take them off the to be shelved area and then leave me left with less books to shelve. So he did that. He actually took out a piece of paper because he had a want list. And then I ended up talking with him, and he was actually visiting from, it was either Gettysburg or nearby Gettysburg. So he was a Civil War buff. And he said, you know what? You have some books I've never seen before. So this gentleman ended up buying about 35 of those books. I think we had to help him carry them to his car. So those are the kind of things that happen. So every time I'm there's something interesting like that happens. So yeah, I highly recommend going there, browsing, and if you can, if we're thinking about it, also volunteering, because it is a really good experience, a social experience. I mean, everyone brings certain skill sets with them, and you're going to be an asset to the bookshop, no matter what your past has been. So I really think it's one of the most important things that has happened to me since I've moved here. So, well, thank you.
I was just going to say, to add to that is, you're talking about Civil War. We have at the end of the month, there is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Matt Farina, and he is a retired pediatric cardiologist, but history is his passion. And what he does, he works with UNC a lot. During the pandemic, he created virtual programming for the colleges, but he comes here usually on a quarterly basis. And what he does is he takes a historical piece, and then he takes something else that's historical, like baseball, and he can see the parallels of how this one historic Civil War mark actually comes up, and he ties it neatly with a little bow at the end. You can't believe how he can put these things together. And he comes with his own artifacts, and he'll come with a tie that matches the theme of what it is he's speaking about. He's just amazing how much effort he puts into these presentations, as well as he's part of the roundtable in Moore County. And he not only has information and artifacts and wonderful talks on Civil War, but also all wars. He did a display over at the John Boyd Library at the college on World War II, which was amazing as well. So I really thank everybody for coming today, and we do have the tables in the back, so if the two authors and the bookshop people would like to go back there, if you have any questions or anything you'd like to ask them, please go back there and check it out. And yes, Richard.
I want to acknowledge Leanne and the senior and Sooner for being so gracious. Thank you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much, Richard. Coming to work every day here at the senior center is such a pleasure because it's a light, bright, positive place to begin with. And then there's so many people that want to come here. And so it's my pleasure to put on great programming like this. And it's free. It's wonderful. So why not take advantage of it, right? So thank you guys so much again for coming, and thank you for the kind words, Richard. Thank you again to Home Choice Network for the refreshments, and thank you all for coming. Have a great day. Don't forget to get a newsletter in the lobby.